Hi, I'm Tiffany. Welcome to Towering TBR. Today I'm starting a new series on my channel called Fiction Nonfiction Pairs that are covering the same topic. Today I am going to be talking about a fiction and nonfiction pair about the opioid crisis. The two books I'm talking about are The Evening Hour by Carter Sickels. This is my fiction book, and the nonfiction book is Dopesick by Beth Macy. Both of these books talk about the overprescription of Oxycontin and other opioids and how it was touted to be non-addictive, but ultimately destroyed many lives because people would do anything to prevent withdrawals or dope sickness. I was hoping to be able to recommend both books, but unfortunately that's not how it panned out. One of these books I loved, and the other I felt was a waste of time. So let's start with the book I enjoyed, which is The Evening Hour by Carter Sickels, my fiction choice in this pair. So in this book, we are following Cole. He is a nurse's aide in a nursing home. While Cole takes excellent care of his elderly patients, he also buys pills off of them and sometimes outright steals from them to earn extra income. He was raised by his religious grandparents in the heart of coal country, and the coal company is trying to expand their mining operation by offering to buy them out and displace them off of their land. And so Cole feels he has to have extra money to take care of them, lest they take this deal and be displaced. There are family members and community members in this town that are hooked and will quickly resort to crime in order to be able to afford their habits. The elderly that sell their pills do it for two reasons. The first is that the pills are overprescribed and they don't need that many. And the second is that this is a very poor rural area and jobs are scarce. So by selling their pills, they have the added revenue that they desperately need. In fact, one of the characters even said they needed to pay for their heating and more than they needed these pills. The author did a great job of creating this complex character, and there are layers of good and there are layers of bad. But he feels pushed to this lifestyle because of his extreme circumstances. However, once the police start cracking down, he realizes that he desperately needs to get out. His grandfather used to preach that a person could only be saved if they gave everything up, gave up their old life, and were born again. And the title Evening Hour comes from biblical end times. The title feels apt in describing this poor, drug-addled dystopia that was Appalachia during this opioid epidemic. This book is a character study, it's a slice of life, it's incredibly atmospheric and immersive, and I can't recommend it enough. I loved this book. I even read this book entirely with my eyes. If you're new, I get migraines. I use audiobooks to accommodate, but this book did not have an audiobook, and so I read it over the course of 10 days, and I'm really glad that I did. It was worth the extra effort. So I decided to pair this book with Dopesick by Beth Macy, which is the nonfiction book. She follows drug addicts and their families over the course of a few years and writes their stories. She is mostly set in Maryland and focuses more on middle class and wealthier families, which she points out that the wealthier families, were able to afford their children's many rehab stays, however long it took to get them clean, which poor people don't have that choice, unfortunately. Many of these parents had no clue that their kids were getting into drugs and were absolutely unaware of this epidemic that was rising up. It is so bad that it is apparently the leading cause of death in people under age 50. So let me start with what I liked about this book. I learned two things. The first was that I learned about the pipeline from pills to street drugs. Wealthier kids were having what were called farm parties, like pharmaceuticals, and they would just raid their medicine cabinet of their parents or relatives and just bring these pills, and people would just randomly take pills that they had no idea what were in them. However, Oxycontin proved to be very addictive, and they would continue to seek out more Oxycontin. Eventually, activists sought to restrict these pills and to try and get doctors to not prescribe them as easily, and they changed schedules. But because they were addicted, they would quickly turn to heroin or meth in order to prevent dope sickness, which was these awful withdrawal symptoms. And they would do anything they could to not be in these withdrawal symptoms. The second thing I learned is that science has proven that MAT, medication-assisted treatment, is much more effective than abstinence only. Doctors would prescribe Suboxone or methadone, basically other opioids that were harder to abuse, that could also help with the withdrawal symptoms. However, many of the rehab centers were abstinence only, and if you were using those other drugs, they didn't consider you drug-free, and there was a lot of stigma about using those to try not to be addicted any longer. And she really convinced me that that stigma really needs to go away because science has proven it is the most successful way to get off drugs. Okay, I've started with the positive. Let me tell you what I didn't like about this book. First of all, Beth Macy cannot write. She is a bad writer. Let me share an example. But Patricia wasn't giving up on her father's generosity, and she wasn't giving up on Tess. Giving up on her father's generosity? Like, okay, that's an objectively bad segue. But I hear you. You're like, nah, that's just nitpicking. That's not enough. Okay, I hear you. Here's another example. Tyson was camera ready and thoroughly put together each time we met, except once, when mascara smudged her doctor's coat. I would find out soon enough why she had been crying for days. And it wasn't because the battery on her Winnebago had just conked out. The nonprofit marketing manager was dispatched with a battery booster to give us a jump, while Tyson's husband offered real-time jump counsel via FaceTime. What? What? Okay. That was not necessary at all. We don't need to know that her car broke down and so-and-so gave help via FaceTime. Okay, whatever. Also, we don't find out why that lady was crying for 7 whole pages. And spoiler alert, it's because somebody she knew died. But why would they even talk about it wasn't because her Winnebago couldn't start? It's like, she also weirdly inserted herself in the story, which I found awkward and uncomfortable. She is talking about one of the people, Tess, that she has been following for this whole journey, and Tess has finally gotten clean. However, Tess texts her and says, please pick me up, I need help. She writes, I weighed what to do, talked with my husband, and ultimately forwarded Tess's plea to both Patricia and Jamie Waldrop, who was Tess's Hope volunteer. The next time I saw Tess, neither of us brought it up. 1, Tess is about to relapse, and she could have helped her. But let's say she wanted to try and be journalistic, she wanted to try and stay objective. Maybe we could say that. But then, not that much longer, she says that she visited Tess in a psychiatric hospital. She'd asked me to bring a copy of my latest book, True Vine, which she had read about in People magazine at the psych ward. That felt really weird, a weird insertion, oh, my book was really popular, and so she wanted a copy. Okay, it's weird. But the thing that really, really made me not like this book was her overt manipulation of trying to wring out this emotional response. I cannot stand it when authors just try to emotionally manipulate you to try and make you cry. Hate that. So she talks a lot about the loved ones who are left behind after their addict dies. She went on for several paragraphs about a mom who planted sunflowers in her son's memory, or a woman who took her ashes with her everywhere she goes, even in court when she had to testify against the dealers who sold her son the drugs. And she just brings up these little pointless things to try and wring out an emotional response. And I didn't like that. And the last thing that I really thought rubbed me the wrong way was when she said this. The federal disability program was becoming a de facto safety net for the formerly employed, a well-intentioned but ultimately disastrous way of incentivizing poor people to stay sick. Stay sick. 1, nobody wants to be sick. I say this as a person who deals with chronic illness. Nobody wants to stay sick. Are there people who milk this situation or take advantage of these programs? Absolutely. There are people who do that. But for her to just lump them all together as people who are having this conscious choice to not get better was incredibly ableist. And she follows it up with, if OxyContin was the new moonshine in rural America, disability was the new factory work, which was just oversimplified and glib. And ultimately, her message was incredibly muddled. I didn't really know what she wanted me to come away from this book knowing. I mean, I did learn a little, which is why it's getting 2 stars. But overall, I thought this was pretty bad. I know that there are some great nonfictions with talking about the opioid crisis, and if you have read any that you would recommend, definitely let me know in the comments below. I know that there's The Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. I would like to read that one. That one sounds good. But if you know of any others, definitely let me know because I cannot recommend this book. So, quick summary. Do I recommend The Evening Hour by Carter Sickels? Yes. Do I recommend Dopesick by Beth Macy? No. I would definitely love to talk to you more about books that talk about the opioid crisis or any other topics that you're interested in me covering in the future. Let's have a chat in the comments down below. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.